Ever feel like the world's trying to, like, put you in a box, based on what they think they know about you?
Hmm.
Well, today, we're going deep with Werdang Lewis
Okay.
and his book, The Future Ahead. It's
The future ahead.
yeah, we're talking about race and identity, the whole, like, messy experience of being human.
Yeah, yeah.
What really struck me was how Lewis' story, it's both deeply personal, but it also, like, connects to these huge issues we all see, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And he brings such a unique viewpoint. I mean, having grown up in South Sudan, living in different parts of the world,
Right.
Lewis seen firsthand how these forces kind of play out.
He's got this line early on that just, like, it stayed with me. He writes, "I was born black and became black by society's definition."
Yeah.
It's like, whoa, there's being born with certain features.
Right.
And then there's how the world treats you because of them,
Exactly. Lewis argues that blackness, at least how society uses it, it's more than skin deep. It's
Right.
this label, and it has all these like preloaded assumptions attached to it.
Yeah.
He talks about constantly feeling underestimated, like people just wouldn't expect him to be, smart or accomplished.
And it's crazy how early that stuff starts,
Yeah.
Like, he even mentions hiding his books as a kid to avoid being judged.
Which is heartbreaking when you think about it. Imagine feeling like your love for learning is something to be ashamed of.
Yeah.
It really shows how deeply ingrained these biases can be, even in just like casual interactions.
Totally. And he doesn't just talk about this in the abstract.
Right.
He shares these stories from his own life.
Like moving to different cities. And it's those subtle differences in how he's treated that, like they kind of build up over time.
And that's what we often miss when we talk about things like systemic racism or implicit bias.
Yeah.
They're not just these big, scary words.
Right.
They're a million little moments that add up to a very real experience for people.
Like the story he tells about being at the financial aid office in college.
Okay.
And all the other students are being called by name. But when it gets to his turn, the office worker just like points.
Wow.
It's a small detail.
Yeah,
But it speaks volumes.
absolutely. Have you ever been in a situation where you felt like you were being judged based on how you look, your background, like your name alone changed how people saw you before you even said a word? It makes you think, right? Like, what assumptions are people making about me without even realizing it?
Right.
And then it's like, how often am I doing that to other people?
And that's the power of Lewitt's writing, I think. He makes you confront these uncomfortable truths,
Yeah.
both in society and in ourselves.
And Luth, he doesn't just, like, lay out all the problems. He digs into solutions, too,
Yeah.
especially when he's talking about South Sudan,
Yeah.
his home country.
And this is where his personal story, it gets so intertwined with the bigger picture. It's not just history, it's his life.
It's personal.
Yeah.
He talks about that fight for independence, back in 2011 from Sudan.
Right.
You can almost feel the hope in his words,
Yeah.
like a new chapter was starting.
Right, but then a chapter that tragically was marred by civil war just a few years later.
Yeah.
And Lewis doesn't shy away from, sharing how that conflict personally affected him, including the loss of his brother.
It's a stark reminder that behind these huge global events are individual stories, families torn apart.
Yeah.
And it seems like that loss really fueled Lewis' determination to, like, understand why this keeps happening in South Sudan.
Absolutely. He's critical of what he sees as this like lack of planning, a lack of vision in those like really early days after independence.
He uses this metaphor
Yeah.
of a family celebrating a new house, but they haven't realized they need, furniture, running water, all the basics.
Right.
That's what he felt was missing. The how to actually build a functioning country.
Yeah.
After that, that initial euphoria of freedom.
It's a great analogy, and it really highlights this point he makes about many leaders, they're coming from a background of struggle,
Right.
of being refugees themselves,
Yeah.
which is admirable.
Right.
But Lewis argues that sometimes that meant that they lacked the experience to actually govern effectively.
It's like they knew how to survive, but not necessarily how to lead a whole nation, towards peace and prosperity.
Exactly. And that feeds into his critique of what he calls this military mindset that was kind of pervading South Sudan. It's like the focus is still on fighting for survival instead of building for the future.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. He doesn't mince words about it either,
No, he doesn't.
Calling out the lack of accountability, the disconnect between those in power and the everyday citizens. And education, or the lack of it, it's a major concern for him.
Huge.
He's pretty scathing about what he calls universities in name only.
Yeah.
Saying that they lack resources, a real curriculum.
Structure, yeah.
It's like they're missing the foundation upon which a strong society is built.
Right, exactly.
So with all this bleakness, you might be wondering, where's the hope? But Luth does offer solutions. All right.
He does.
Like concrete steps he believes could put South Sudan on a better path.
Absolutely. He's a huge proponent of a strong constitution.
Okay.
Something that very clearly lays out the rights and responsibilities of both the government and the people. Like a rule book that everyone agrees on.
Yeah.
To try to prevent these, abuses of power.
Makes sense. And I remember he was really passionate about education reform.
Yes.
Not just teaching facts, but critical thinking, how to be an engaged citizen.
He's talking about equipping people with the tools to not just survive, but to thrive.
Right.
And to demand better from their leaders.
Yeah.
It's about fostering that sense of shared national identity, which can be so elusive, especially after years of conflict.
Yeah. And Luth, he doesn't let individuals off the hook either. Like, he believes everyone has a role to play.
Absolutely.
In shaping a better future for South Sudan.
This is where his idea of a citizenship form comes in.
Okay.
And it's less about a literal form and more about encouraging people to think.
Ooh.
What are my skills? What do I bring to the table? How can I contribute? It's like he's challenging us to think beyond our own lives. To ask ourselves, what kind of country do I want to live in and what am I willing to do about it?
Yes, and he doesn't just leave it there. Luth takes it a step further, almost like redefining leadership. He argues that anyone, regardless of their title, if they fail to serve their nation, they are accountable for their actions.
Wow. It's like he's saying that failing to lead responsibly is a disservice to the people you're meant to serve, a betrayal of trust. It's a heavy thought, but it really emphasizes the responsibility that comes with leadership. At any level. Really.
At any level, exactly.
He's like, with great power comes great responsibility.
Right.
But like, applied on a whole other level.
Right. And it really makes you think about leadership in a different light. It's not just about holding some position.
It's about doing something. Yeah. Taking action. It's about like serving those who've entrusted you with their well-being.
And that's what's so inspiring about Luth, I think.
Yeah.
Like, he doesn't just point fingers.
No.
He challenges all of us to step up,
Right.
whether we're talking about a nation or even just our own communities.
Exactly. He's basically saying, like, the fight for a better future, it's not just happening globally, it's happening in our everyday lives.
Right.
In the choices that we make.
Our
The
interaction.
way we interact. Exactly.
Yeah.
And it starts by asking ourselves some tough questions. And he leaves us with a big one. What does a good country, a good society, even, what does that even look like to you?
It's such a simple question,
It is.
but it cuts to the core of what we value.
Yeah. What are we striving for?
What are we working towards?
And then the real challenge, what responsibility do we each have in, building that, both locally and globally?
It's a question that really stayed with me. And it's so easy to get caught up in just like day-to-day life.
Right.
But Luth reminds us that we all have a part to play, in shaping the world around us.
Absolutely.
The future ahead. It's one of those books that it stays with you
Yeah.
long after you finish it.
Yeah.
It's challenging, definitely thought-provoking, but ultimately I think it's hopeful.
It is hopeful.
If you're looking for something that will make you think and, maybe inspire you to actually do something,
Yes.
highly recommend checking it out.
I couldn't agree more. Worderdang Luth's story, his insights, they offer a really powerful lens through which to view the world. And more importantly, I think our place in it.
Yeah.
It's a call to awareness, to action, and to never stop questioning how we can, create a more just and equitable future for everyone.
And on that note, we'll leave you to dive into Luth's work yourself. We hope this deep dive has kind of like sparked your curiosity.
Yeah.
And maybe even inspired you to see the world with fresh eyes. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and most importantly, keep the conversation going.